So I printed off my very first resume. It was so bad. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I thought we would talk about my resume that got me my very first UX design position. It's been a while since I've actually taken a look at this, but hopefully that'll be fun for the both of us to see what I had on there and to see how I was able to actually use this resume to get my very first UX job. So a few basics before we look into the content of the resume, but as you can see, this is a 2-page resume. My university said that 2-page resumes are absolutely fine, and no matter what kind of department you are in my university, they would give you the same template to follow. So this is just the one that I used and kept up until my current resume at this moment. I made this resume in Google Drive and in Google Docs because it's just easier for me to be able to update it whenever I wanted to, and I can export it into a PDF really easily too. The font that I used for this resume was Proxima Nova, which is kind of weird because my current resume and even my current portfolio site, I still use the same font, so I guess just old habits die hard. And then the color that I chose was black. And finally, this resume is not formatted at all. I pretty much just used spaces and hoped things ended up lining up properly, and they absolutely didn't, which makes everything look a little bit weird, but that's okay. You guys know how the story ended up. I am in a UX design position right now, so I guess it did its job. Alright, but with that out of the way, let's get into the actual content of my resume. So the first thing that I have is my title, and I've actually blocked out a lot of my personal information and the places that I worked at just for some confidentiality. But in my title, first thing that I have smack dab in the center is my name in all caps, like I'm shouting it at that person who's reading it. Great. The two other things I have in my title are just my phone number and my email. I'm not sure why I didn't put my LinkedIn on there. I'm pretty sure I had a LinkedIn, and I definitely didn't have a website of any kind at that point, so there's no portfolio. Now that goes against everything that I've told you guys on this channel about creating a portfolio and creating a resume to get a UX position, but I am getting ahead of myself. We will get to that in a little bit about why that happened. The next thing that I have in my resume is my profile section. I even added like a fancy black line to make it stand out a little bit more, I guess. But my university told us to do this. They gave us like a 2-page list of adjectives that will look really good on a resume apparently, and told us to pick like 4, maybe 5 of them, and then give experiences related to each one. So that's kind of what I did here. I added analytical, which honestly kind of reads funny, but okay, and talked about my background in computer science. For some reason, I only capitalized computer and not science. That bothers me now. The next big section is my education. Bachelor of Science, Computer Science, and I also listed out the dates that I was in my degree, so 2011 to 2017. Looking at it now, I think this is honestly a pretty bad move on my part. Clearly, it just means that I took 6 years to finish up my undergrad when I didn't do any internships, so then I would have to explain why it took so long for me to finish a 4-year degree. That's why in my current resume, I just say class of 2017. And I don't have my GPA on there. I don't think you should put your GPA on your resume unless it's like 3.0, probably 3.5, and I definitely didn't have that. I remember when I was looking for a job after graduating from university, anytime an employer would ask me for my transcript, I knew I was never going to hear from them again. The next section is programming skills. So about here, I need to explain that I was really wishy-washy with this resume, and I do not recommend it. I was hopefully dreaming of a UX position, but I was also like, you know, being a full-stack developer wouldn't be so bad either. So that's why I have my programming skills in there. And the way that I had it written out was what I had excellence in. So these are the things that I use pretty much day to day in my current role. The next section that I have are proficient in, which sounds really weird. And finally, the last part that I have is software. So just things, tools that I've used before. And here, that's when I actually started adding a little bit of like mock-ups, wireframes in there, because I have Adobe Experience Design, so Adobe XD. All right, now we can finally get into the relevant experience, because I thought that was a good term to use on my resume. See, I thought it would be relevant experience and then irrelevant experience. That's pretty dumb. Why did I do that? What? I have a relevant experience on here as well as additional experience on my resume. I think what I must have thought back in 2018 was that relevant experience were experiences that would be relevant to my role as a future UX designer or a future full stack developer. And then additional experience are things that I kind of just did, like additionally, fine. And I didn't call them volunteer experience because they were like jobs that I actually got paid for. So I'll talk about that a little bit later, but let's get back to my relevant experience. So the first thing that I had in relevant experience is UI UX designer. So in my startup, my manager knew ever since like my interview process that I was really interested in design, and that's what I kind of have like a passion for. So anytime we were like developing a new app or designing a website for a client or something, that would get passed on to me because we didn't have any in-house designers working with us. If you've watched my career so far, I think it's like comp sci to software dev to UX designer. It's a really long title for the video, but that was the same manager that I cried to when I resigned from my very first job. The next one is at the same company. This was my real role when I was there as a software developer. And yeah, I just listed a few of the projects I had done back then. I feel like I'm just trying to fit as many buzzwords as I can into this whole thing, but okay. The next couple things are web developer and UI UX designer. So both of these are actually school projects that I did in university. The web developer one was for a data visualization class. We all had a term project that we would do individually where we took a huge data set and tried to visualize it in a really good way. The last one in here is again another UI UX designer role, and this was for like a term project that I did for my human computer interaction course. But really the reason why I have these on here is just because I wanted more roles that said UI UX designer, because that's what I really want to get into. For additional experience, these were things that are actually like jobs that I had but probably don't mean too much to me if I decide to go down that full stack developer route. I just didn't really know what I was going for at that moment. I had a dream, but I also wanted to stay realistic that I might just stay as a developer. For the first thing that I have in additional experience is STEM integration specialist. I've honestly haven't really thought about this job in a long time, and I'm not sure why. It's pretty cool. So for this role, I was a writer for an online magazine, and that magazine was to really help teachers learn how to teach STEM. I basically got the job because I went to a networking event where I met like the boss of this organization, and they heard about my taekwondo and martial arts experience teaching children, and they heard about how I was in computer science and I worked as a software dev. So they kind of just were like, why don't you write articles for us online and teach teachers how to teach sciences? The next thing I have on here is content contributor, editor, and graphic designer. So we have a pretty big organization in my city for helping women transition into technology, like the tech industry. First, I was a content contributor for them. So I just wrote articles, more writing again. And then I moved into an editor role as well. And then finally, also graphic designer. So these two roles were primarily like writing and also I guess a little bit of like marketing and blogging. But I thought they would really help me in my UI UX pursuit because it's all just like designing and making stuff and communicating. So I really just wanted to have these in there for my resume. The final couple things that I have in additional experience are just my martial arts teaching experience. I've been a taekwondo instructor, I've been a wushu and also a tai chi instructor. I always get questions on this when I do any kind of interviews for any position. It's like a great talking point, so I've always just tried to keep it into my resume. So that pretty much sums up my relevant and additional experience. The next part I have is my professional development. I think for here, like you're actually supposed to put in things like conferences you spoke at, design certificates you did or stuff, but I didn't really do any of that. So I have like my taekwondo black belts, and I had won a scholarship for some kind of coding thing as well, and then finally my first aid license because I just needed more stuff. The last thing that I have on my resume are my interests. I mean, I've kind of incorporated my interests into all of my relevant and I guess irrelevant experiences. So there's designing, obviously, there's literature, and by literature I really just mean like I wrote on Medium for like about a year or something. I've taken it all down already, so like it's not there anymore, but I used to do a lot of writing on Medium. And then health and fitness. So again, Tai Chi, Taekwondo, and also yoga. But yeah, this is my resume, my entire 2-page resume from 2018 that helped me land my very first UX design job. Just looking at it now, I can feel the energy that I had back then. I know it was only like 3 years ago or so, but like I just feel so green. And I think it's because I spent 6 years in university struggling through my undergrad that I felt like graduating and like finally getting paid to like work in a job, learn things, and I actually started to enjoy coding more than I had in like 6 years. Like, I think once I graduated, I just felt like I wasted so much time not studying properly, not taking care of my mental health while I was in university, that it just felt like such a fresh start. When I look at this resume, it's just like, I'm really proud of myself because I remember this as like a really good and really fulfilling time for me. I feel like I look really young, really green, but like super passionate and energetic. I don't know, I'm glad I kept it. And for you guys, like, I tell you this all the time, but I really hope that for everything you design now and like your resumes and your old case studies, like, please try to archive them somewhere, try to keep them, because even like 6 months from now, you're going to see such a dramatic difference because you're going to improve so quickly when you get to that point. So it's just really exciting and motivating for you to see yourself grow in like a concrete kind of format. As I'm saying this, my current resume looks absolutely nothing like this. Once I got my first UX role, I was like, well, I need to really focus on this job that I have now and do really well in it. And eventually I started to withdraw myself from a lot of these volunteer opportunities, and I was able to like start cutting things from my resume pretty aggressively, I guess. So now my resume, it looks a lot better, and it's also one page. It's just like a lot cleaner, a lot more like condensed, and I guess purposeful. I think that brings us to the very end of my video. I hope you guys had a good time watching this. There are definitely things that I did in this resume that I do not recommend for you guys. I mean, ideally, I just hope you guys feel a bit more encouraged, inspired. Maybe you learned something. That's always great too from looking at this resume. But thank you as always for watching. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell too so you get notifications whenever I post a new video, and also follow me on Instagram because I post a lot of UX content on there. But yeah, this is the resume that got me my first UX position. I am quite proud of it. I'm happy I have it, and I wish you guys the best of luck if you're looking into upgrading your resume or starting your design journey. You can also book a session with me on Superpeer if you want to talk about your UX career or get me to review any of your work. But I think that's it for now. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have a great rest of your day, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!